Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into On the Beat, brought to you exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network, presented by FanDuel, a show, as Bruce Nolan just said, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter or journalist personality every single week to talk about the topics swirling around our beloved Buffalo Bills. My name is Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter, Joe Miller Wired, alongside my co-host, former Buffalo Bill for 10 years, franchise left tackle John Fina. You can find him on Twitter at John Fina. Please do us a favor. Please like, please subscribe. Whatever platform you are consuming this presentation on right now, whether it's live with us on YouTube or in podcast form, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Do us a favor, get our numbers up. We would greatly appreciate it. Got a lot to talk about here on this Tuesday on the Beat. Today, though, we are excited to have with us once again from WGR550 right here in Buffalo, Nate Geary, ladies and gentlemen. Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. And listen, no offense, Joe, you know I love you. But now this time around when I'm on the podcast, now we get to have John on. And, you know, listen, if we're going to look at the two of you, one of you guys is carrying this thing looks-wise, and it's not you, buddy. So...
That's fair. That's very fair. And I don't have if you guys would like to talk, I can just sit quietly.
You want to just kind of go back into the background and let us
have a bromance.
Nate, you're very sweet. I just hit send on the Venmo.
So I got to guess, Nate, I don't know, and you don't have to disclose how old you are, but I got to think you grew up watching John play. Yes.
Yeah, 33, going to be 34 years old. So he would have been kind of prime years for my formative years for me in my football. So like I always kind of tell people it's not my first full memory, but my first vivid Bills memory is the Music City Miracle. Yep. It's also the first time that I heard my dad use the F word. So It was, yeah.
Banner day there in the Geary house.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. John was much better. As good as John is looking now, he was much better looking back then. So
thanks, Joe.
Wow.
I'm getting uglier every day. It's okay. I can handle it.
Come
at me, bro. Come at me.
That's a great segue. Speaking of getting uglier every day, we've got news out of One Bills Drive here, Nate Geary. The Buffalo Bills have signed. Maybe it's not ugly. I don't know. We'll have a conversation around it. But the Bills signed to the practice squad Shaq Lawson, going back to the well for a draft pick from, 2016 first-round draft pick. Rex Ryan's first-round draft pick out of Clemson, Shaq Lawson. Third or fourth stint with the team. I think it's fourth stint with the team as far as that goes. There was a lot of fun memes going around. Somebody put one out there from Pawn Stars that because Brandin Cooks also got released, and like it was the hole at the counter. I'd like Brandin Cooks, please. And it's the guy going, best I can give you, Shaq Lawson. And then lo and behold, we end up with Brandin Cooks as well, signed to, I believe, the active roster. First reaction to Brandin Cooks joining this football team as a wideout.
I hope that he's got some juice left. I think I remember during postgame after the New Orleans Saints game back in week 4, it might have been, thinking that the Bills were probably a good Brandin Cooks touchdown catch away from losing that New Orleans Saints game at home. And it was not a good throw from Spencer Rattler, low and away. But nonetheless, an open Brandin Cooks. And right now, I think the Bills are looking for guys that can get more consistently open. At this point in his career, he's not really that player that's stretch the field, which I still think is kind of what this team needs. I think, again, there's a little redundancy with his skill set with Khalil Shakir, with some of the other slot guys, Elijah Moore, which I think, if you're playing a game of musical chairs in this room, there might only be 5 chairs. And if someone's not getting a chair, it might be Elijah Moore. I think just his contract's a little bit more easy to discard of at this point. And he's just not making the impact. So I think there's a little bit of redundancy, but I think he's going to have to line up in the slot to be effective. And they've got a lot of guys already lining up there. So we'll see what the signing can do for them. I don't think it can hurt.
I was surprised to see that they signed him to the active roster and not necessarily straight to. I don't know if there's a rule behind that. I don't think there is. I think he could have gone to the practice squad. Maybe there's another offer out there for him. Maybe.
I know there's a number of veterans you're allowed to have on the practice squad. The Bills would have, I think, had to have released somebody, But I also would guess that if there were 3 teams all vying for them, apparently it was the Broncos, the Bills, and the Rams. And it sounds like if, maybe you're the one team that's saying, hey, we'll sign you to the active roster, while the other 2 teams are saying, hey, we'll sign you to the practice squad, a little bit more of an opportunity to play right away. I could see why that might be something that Brandin Cooks would want to do.
Yeah, a player that's in a little bit of demand is definitely better than Shaq Lawson, who probably texted Brandon B and said, I'm flying to Buffalo this week anyway for Thanksgiving. I'll be in town.
Ouch. Come on, Joe. That's rough,
Sorry.
man.
Sorry, John, I'll hand it over to you to see if you've got a question.
Nate, you bring up an interesting point. Like, where does he fit? And then how does that affect, other veterans on the practice squad? I think more of what I want to see is what's the point? What's the skill set that we hope he brings? And if he's also a slot, like I just, it almost plays into everybody feeling like we should have been preparing for this 2 and 3 years ago, or at least last year. Do you feel like there's some sort of cover up? Like, okay, we finally agree and this is the best we can do?
Well, I'll say I would prefer the cover up than the denial of it. I think if we were, going into week 13 and there had been no changes made, that there had been no swings at trying to get another receiver, I think that would be more concerning, right? So I guess we can all appreciate the self-awareness and sort of the pride and the ego that you have to set aside if you're Brandon Beane, because we all know the, interview with Jeremy and Joe in the morning that sort of went viral and then got resurfaced here over the last couple of weeks as this, Keon Coleman situation has unfolded. So I guess where I stand is, yeah, I'm disappointed. It shouldn't have gotten to this point, but I guess I'm also semi-relieved that they know that they need to continue doing anything they can to address it. It just does feel a little too too late, unfortunately. So I don't know what the role is going to be for Brandin Cooks, but I can tell you that, just a Mecole Hardman getting the 5 snaps or whatever he got before the injury, they take that deep shot to him down the field, and on that play, you have Khalil Shakir on a deep in route, just coming wide open over the middle of that zone, and you can see. And Mecole Hardman's not a bona fide outside deep threat in the league, not anymore, anyways. But you could just see what the infusion of any kind of top end speed in this lineup can do for some of the other things that they're struggling with in their passing offense right now. So I don't know that he necessarily is going to give you that. But if he could be another reliable set of hands, and, I just keep seeing or feeling that there's signs here, guys, that just might have seen the last of Keon Coleman. This sort of kind of feels like another, this feels more of an indictment on him than maybe an indictment on the room at large.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Joe, excuse me. I just want to say, so it almost feels like it's a setup that wide receiver 1 in the draft. Like we have to, obviously, look, we want to go into the playoffs, go deep in the playoffs, still have a chance to win the Super Bowl. I'm not writing the season off by any measure, but just these moves over the last few weeks, signing receivers, it's sort of like, okay, we've got to do this. And then we're going to look to the draft and make sure that we get a guy or the guy.
Yeah, I would hope so.
All right. So by you saying that, all I heard was, I want an interior defensive lineman. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Maybe another interior defensive lineman, maybe an edge rusher. I think it was so hard to watch, and especially rewatch that Texans game from Thursday night, because, I think it was the perfect storm of all of their weaknesses, both schematically and personnel wise, kind of making its way to the top, right? And to me, it was their inability to adjust and add extra protection for Josh. It was their inability when their wide receivers were out, just running very similar or the same concepts over and over again. It felt like I was watching a very good defensive backfield from the Texans, by the way, but I was watching a defensive backfield that were running routes for the Bills. And you could have prime Randy Moss, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase out there. And if defenders know where they're running, it kind of doesn't matter who the personnel is. So I think part of my thought process about this offense, about what they'll do in the future, and maybe a renewed sense of urgency to find the guy at wide receiver. Listen, I think a lot of these problems offensively are at the play calling and scheme level. And then there's another layer of Josh Allen not taking enough of the open guy. I think that if I could probably convince myself that there are bigger needs. I think linebacker is a sneaky high need for this team. I think they need another playmaking safety. I think they need to really address their slot corner. And to your point, John, we could say all of these things. These are on the wish list. This is still a team that I think could find a way. If they can to me, there's two big things. If they can find a way to find a group of 6 defensive linemen they can trust on early downs that just aren't immediately being displaced and automatically creating wide open, gaping holes for offenses, I think that their defense could get hot, right? And maybe a couple of turnovers and kind of flip the script here towards the end of the season. And I think offensively, if they can just sort of get back to getting more of the matchups they're looking for, I think they need to use more Alec Anderson. And I like Jackson Hawes a lot, but I think they're seeing way more 6-man boxes. I just saw a thing from Cover One. This is the least amount of 6-man boxes that the Bills have seen. And I think maybe bringing Alec Anderson back into the fold can create some more mismatches for them. So I'm also not writing them off. I think they're a team capable of getting hot. They've showed it before. But, I think they're running out of time here, guys.
Finishing up on the wide receivers a little bit before we pivot. You look at just the crew that they've assembled, and it's a mash unit on some levels, right? It's a ball of slot receivers. To your point about Keon Coleman, is it possible we've seen the last of Keon Coleman as the Buffalo Bill, who is a slot receiver that they've never really given extensive work in the slot, right? So they draft him, ask him to do something that's not really his gift. You talk about Joshua Palmer on the outside because they haven't really had an outside guy. Gabe comes back, pleasantly surprised and happy with Gabe's work since he's been back. And where I'm going with this is just the point about getting deep. Mecole Hardman have the 5 snaps, having that deep play. Curtis Samuel is a speed guy. They won't put him out there and tell him to go deep. And then you've learned this from Bruce Nolan a million years ago, verticality. Gabe Davis has the ability to get vertical. We've seen it as a not 4-4, 4-3 guy. It's bizarre to me, the collection of slot dudes, and I don't even know, and they're platooning guys like in and out for personnel sets. Like it's hard for me to fathom. I don't know if either of the two of you can kind of describe maybe what they're trying to do. It can't be about matches, right? They're not doing matchups. It's just strange to me.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of beyond matchups. It's almost like they treat their rotation like they've got 5 just dogs, like horses out there. They've just got to find ways to get them on the field. And I know, going back from my time playing football, and John, you can go back to your time. There's not a ton of examples across the NFL that I can remember where an offensive coordinator used his pass weapons with such irregularity. Without a true plan. And this goes beyond the offensive coordinator to me, is drafting Keon Coleman. What was the plan? And I don't think there was a real formal plan there. You draft a kid that's in the 7th round, Prather from Maryland. What's the plan? And it just seems like there has been a disconnect between this general manager and this team's offensive coordinator. I think Ken Dorsey was another example of this, right? I mean, all of a sudden they needed to go out and draft and sign running backs that can come out of the backfield and catch the football as specialists, but they didn't really use them. And then, it was, they need another tight end. They want to be able to go 12 personnel. And then they didn't really use Dawson Knox anymore, and they just turned him into a glorified blocker. So it just to me, there is some level of disconnect between scouting and then what the plan for that player is when they bring them in. And it seems to be at that position particularly, or just the pass catcher position. So yeah, I think that Gabe Davis looked, good because they were just starving, in the everybody eats world. They were starving for boundary play. Someone that could beat physicality at the point of attack, someone that could stem a route, create separation, and doesn't need to be a guy that's got foot speed. But yeah, I mean, I agree. There is some puzzling usage across the board, maybe not utilizing guys in the right positions, but it just, to me, I think it's a failure to plan. And I think that's where you're failing right out of the gate.
Yeah, it's sorry, John, 2 seconds real quick. As a former quarterback, Nate, that played at the collegiate level, it felt like Josh Allen was starving for comfortability as well. And there was almost a kind of an instant comfort, it seemed like, that Josh felt with Gabe as soon as Gabe got in the game. Yes?
Yeah, totally. Those two have a rapport. And it's funny, like when you have a receiver like that, that you trust, when you comes in, it kind of just looks natural, especially I think that looked so natural because of how disjointed some of the other stuff was as well.
Right, right.
Yeah, I wanted to add this. We talk about these troops or platoons of wide receivers that are rolling in, and then we go between 12 and 13 personnel and back and forth. It's almost like a vote of no confidence. Like, okay, who's going to show up on this play? And I think, by doing that, you send a message to the players, like, who really cares? Like, I'm not going to get a time to get in and get my groove. And now they're thinking it's going to be a motivating force. And the players are thinking, well, it's just a kind of a dubious, misunderstanding of what we're trying to do here. And then you couple that with what you said, Nate, about what's our true plan? What's our true identity? And we talk a lot about going vertical down I'm tired of trying to say we got to find the right guy to go down the sideline. The middle of the field is 45 yards wide, and we do not work the middle of the field. And then you get late into the game when we're in almost like a dead panic, and we start hitting these 8 to 14 yard curls and crossing routes, and you're like, well, why are we waiting so long? Why aren't we utilizing the entire field in our pass game? And it's just I don't know. I can't riddle it out, Joe, and I'm really kind of angry with you for putting Nate and I in the spot like we have all the answers.
Somebody's got to answer them. You guys have both played football, so
I think a little of this. This reminds me of when I back at Buff State my freshman year, we had 3 really incredibly talented running backs, all very different. One was a 6'2" slender track guy who you get him in space, he's gone. Another guy was our all-around back, and then we had a little Achan, just crazy speed. Little Achan was the third back and only got in kind of sparse moments, and you could never really get him in at the right time. And now you're thinking, well, maybe he's not as good as we thought when he was coming in as recruit. The following year, 2 running backs now are hurt, and he's the feature back. Now he's all, ECIC, he's all this, he's all that, runs for 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns and wins all conference. And part of it is just because, like, okay, hey, what are your opportunities? And when running backs or receivers, people that are getting the football, it's super important. Like you hear Randy Moss and you heard Tom Brady talk about this with Randy Moss. He'd want early in a game, I'm just going to get Randy Moss into this game, involved in this game with a quick target. Even if it's incomplete, I want him to know, hey, in the beginning of the game, we're setting the stage. We're getting you ready. We're getting you going in this game. And I think that if you have a bunch of guys who all probably feel they should be the guy on this team, right? I mean, if you're Elijah Moore, you're saying, I'm looking around saying, I got the best career stats of anybody on this roster right now. Right. What am I doing as the number 5 receiver, bro? Like, and if you're Curtis Samuel, you're like, I'm a 4,000-yard receiver. Who is Keon Coleman, bro? Like, I'm a 1,000-yard receiver in this league. So I think if you have a bunch of guys that are thinking that but not getting opportunities, how is Elijah Moore supposed to make anything of an opportunity if he's getting 14 snaps a game? It's just
you're so right. There's no vote of no confidence in everybody, and there's not a vote of confidence for anyone. And you talked about Tom Brady. I'm gonna get that ball out, right? We do that, except it's another bubble screen.
Yeah, listen, John, the bubble screen was a really nice feature of the offense when they introduced it 2 years ago. And it was like, oh, okay, hey, they've got something here. Here's the layup that you need in every offense. Every offense needs a layup, but what it's become is that and mesh, and there's and duo and the pitch. To me, they fall in love with concepts, and then they run them over and over again with different masks, right? Like, hey, we're going to throw a different formation with different personnel, but it's still mesh. Ooh, we're going to move, Gabe Davis into the slot. We're going to run it tight, or we're going to run trips to one side. But then I'm like, oh, that's tunnel screen. I've seen that look 3 times. And if I'm IDing that from a 28-inch TV at the station or from field level behind double pane glass, there's a good chance defensive coordinators are A, prepped for it, and B, are also noticing that on the field. And like you just saw and you heard D'Amico Ryans talk about, basically they were getting one-on-ones because they knew that the Bills were going to dedicate a guard to the spy. And basically that spy wasn't rushing the passer. He wasn't getting after Josh. He was just taking an offensive lineman out of play so they could have 4 one-on-ones across the line of scrimmage. There wasn't 92% of their plays included 5-man protections. That is just such a lack of real-time understanding and adjustment making and saying, hey, my quarterback's on an island, my right tackle's shoulder's falling off. I need to add a second. I need to bring even if you wanted to run a 6-man protection and run Alec Anderson in, or just, hey, Dawson Knox is going to have to make sure no matter what, before he goes out and runs a route, he's got to get a chip on that defensive end, and then he can get out. Oh, my running back. I watched James Cook over and over and over again until the fourth quarter before a running back chipped a defensive end. They're just free releasing. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, I'm like, these are just that's something I'm like, I've got to blame the quarterback. Protection is on the quarterback, but protection can't be on the quarterback if the offensive coordinator is not giving him the personnel to get those protections right. He's not losing because he's getting free rushers and calling Louis when it should be Robbie, right? I mean, that's not what's happening there. So I think for me, he needs to be set up better by his offensive coordinator, both from a conceptual perspective. They need more diversity in their passing game. And on top of that, they just need to, at the very basic level, what's the first thing that you're installing in camps, John? It's not plays, it's protections. When you get in the summer, the first thing you do is you get your offensive linemen together, and it's the worst part of camp for quarterbacks. You want to know why? Because we take a snap, we say the snap count, we take a snap, and then we watch the offensive linemen in slow motion take all of their pass protections, and you're calling them at the line of scrimmage. It's the most boring but fundamental piece to what install is on offense. And the fact that we're in week 13 even talking about this is mind-blowing to me.
Oh, my God. I'm just going to say, if you caught my show last night, this is my show encapsulated. Everything that Nate Geary just said, and except I added a little bit of profanity just to spice it up a little bit.
A lot of profanity.
But I'll say this, Nate, and adding on to it, you talk about why aren't you doing these things? Why aren't you coming up with something? And to me, it goes back to hubris. Like, you are so in love with yourself and your product and your little baby that you're unwilling to look at the evolution of things around you, the possibility that what you're doing is stale, that everybody, you go back and watch that game, the Texans running backs and tight ends slowed our ends down with chips and doubles all over the place. And to me, it was the same damn thing. I'm like, 5-man protection is only good as long as it's good, right? And when, people talk about just going back to the K-gun, right? We lost, I can't remember, remind me, the coach that went to Indianapolis to be the head coach in 1990. Not Bresnahan. The O coordinator went to
Marcia
Broda leaves Buffalo. And what is said, because I'm not an offensive guru, is the thing that made Marcia Broda great was not so much that he came up with the concept of the no huddle, but from the 25-yard line in, every week was a different attack plan based on what the defense gave you. And I think this hubris of just falling in love with what you did yesterday because it worked today, and to think that it works tomorrow and forever is just, you're just silly.
It reminds me of Mike McDaniel, where they come up with some kind of crazy concept. It's the little quick, motion that displaces defenses and creates zones that you can attack. And then all of a sudden, 8, 9, 10 weeks in, and teams start to figure it out. They had no off-speed pitch, right? There was no changeup. There was no curveball. And for me, I look at the offense and I say, hey, what happened to the days where offensive coordinators, you're stealing concepts from people? Like, for me, if I'm Joe Brady, I'm watching Sean McVay every single week. I'm watching what they're doing with 38-year-old Matt Stafford, who, don't get me wrong, is still playing at a really high level. But what they're doing, you know what they have, guys? They have a bunch of receivers that aren't great separators. Puka Nacua, unbelievable player. He's not a top 20, top 30, top 40 separator. Devonta Adams, at this point of his career, he's not a top 30, top 40 separator. And you know who runs 13 personnel more than anybody in football? The Los Angeles Rams. And you know what they do better than anybody in football? Move the pocket. And when you have a quarterback that's fighting things and you're having trust issues, you know what you do? You simplify the game by creating more half reads for him. And then you let a Gabriel Davis, you let a guy with some speed on the back end where 95% of quarterbacks on a rollout to the right, you're never getting backside to that deep post, but Josh Allen can. So if you want to create an explosive play down the field, all of a sudden you're rotating right, you're rolling out right, and against four defensive linemen who are teeing off on you. You know what else you can do if you don't want to bring in a sixth guy to protect? You could try to move the pocket and move Josh Allen around. So I think, and where is Josh Allen at his best? It's off structure, it's off the script. It's when he can be on the move and make throws down the field. And I just think they're not leaning enough into that. And listen, like, they're the number one rushing team in the league, and they're really good. And James Cook's really good at that. And Aaron Cromer's got his shit together up front, right? But what they've got to figure out is, hey, on first down, how do we become not so predictable? When we run shotgun, teams know we aren't going to run the ball almost 70% of the time. When we're under center, teams know we're running the football. When Dalton Kincaid, when he's back in this lineup, he's such an important piece to us in the pass game. The problem is he's getting 35% of the snaps, and 28% of those snaps are pass plays. So when he comes onto the field, the defensive coordinator and the defensive coaches, they get paid lots of money. They're all the flickers are like, hey, it's going to be a pass. It's going to be a pass. So I just think that there's a level of, okay, well, what's next? We're past the the table of contents, and we're past chapter 1, and it just feels like we've got some empty pages here, and it's not a good thing to feel. And I just think scheme was able to overcome. Last year lied to this organization a little bit, both offensively and defensively. Last year they were supposed to take a step back, and they didn't. And I think it lied a little to the pro scouting staff. It lied a little to Brandon Beane and to Sean McDermott about what needed to be fixed. And I tweeted this last week, and I said, in the NFL, and this goes with in any professional sport, you are never the same year to year. You're either better or worse. And the Bills thought they could stay the same on offense. And I think that was a really fatal sort of roster flaw going into this year.
Well, that was great, Nate. And I'm going to give you the bad news. I don't know if you saw it, but apparently Joe Brady defended all the 5-man protection by just referencing some pressure that was received in whether it was a bootleg or a 6-man pro. So he's got no designs on changing it. Like, we're not going to see a rhythmic change.
Going down with the ship. Yeah.
That could be a problem this week against the Steelers, because the Steelers are not a mirror image of the Texans' defensive line, but they're pretty freaking good.
And if you want to talk about, I look at the Steelers defense, they remind me of the defensive version of the Bills offense. And they run a lot of predictable coverages on the back end. They get beat a lot. Tight ends kill them. I saw a great stat on Twitter. I'm going to forget who posted it. I apologize, but posted like 3 huge performances from tight ends against this Steelers defense. And if you can get 13 or 12 or 13 personnel, and you can get them into base defense, they're going to run cover 3. It's predictable. The Bills can get after that a little bit. So I agree with you, though. I mean, they're going to run a lot of 4-man pressures against you, 5-man pressures. J.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, they've got some dogs. I would be willing to bet Spencer Brown is not playing this week. That the shoulder injury didn't look good. I know he could get some, he could get shot up by the doc and maybe get through it, but I would be willing to bet they're going to they trust Ryan Vandermark. So yeah, I mean, they might very well be going in with an 80% Spencer Brown or a backup tackle against a very good defensive line.
Well, and be that as it may, if it's Vandermark and we see 80 to 95% 5-man protection, I'm leaving the bar.
I'll keep the second mic in the station warm for you, John.
I tell you what, unfettered Nate Geary here on Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, and I absolutely love it. You guys are both bringing solid content, so you're welcome to all of our listeners. Nate dropping bombs all over the place. That was great, Nate. Thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find your content.
Yeah, at Nate Geary Sports on Twitter. I've got some written stuff coming out here over the next couple of weeks as we dive deeper into or close to playoff season, hopefully for the Bills. But yeah, you can find everything I do right through Twitter.
Very good. So good to have you on again. Appreciate it, dude. It's just a blast to hear. Like I said, just There's like I said, unfettered. I feel like there's a freedom sometimes when you're inside the WGR cage, right? There's an aspect of like got a job to do, whereas here you can be a little more free. So appreciate all of the everything that you said today, but it really wrapped it up nicely. So thanks for that.
Of course, man.
Ladies
Thanks for
and
having me,
gentlemen,
boys.
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning into the On the Beat on the Overreaction Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. And I got to talk about it. The line for this Steelers game per FanDuel is 4.5. The Bills are favored by 4.5 points. I think I said last night, I don't know how Vegas is still favoring the Bills in anything because they've only beaten the line twice this year so far. I don't know where anybody feels on that or where you guys fall on that. We don't have time to discuss it, but do with that as you may. We'll be talking to Dan Freddy this weekend on Mafia Bets on Saturday about this game and all the stuff. But tomorrow, 7 days to Sunday, Zig Fracassi and Jerry Ostrowski. And then Saturday morning, the walkthrough with Anthony Marino. But for me, for John, for Jerry, for Nate, for Zig, for Ant, for Dan, for all of us here at Overreaction, we appreciate you guys. Love you. Go Bills.
I am today and tomorrow and forever. Go Bills.
Nate.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.